Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very senior professional from the worlds of film, from the world of films and media from Los Angeles, USA, Mr. Peter Samuelson. Peter, welcome to the show.
I'm honored to be with you.
Thank you. Peter is the co-founder and president of First Star. He's the chief executive officer of PhilmCo Media LLC, and he continues to fight every day for those less fortunate, chief among them being abused and neglected children. So, Peter, tell me a little bit about your own journey. You say that happiness begins with making the world better. How did this understanding take shape in your early life?
Well, one of the things that when I do my mentoring of young adults that I say is you have to have a mentor. I think everybody needs at least one
Correct.
mentor. My first pivot, I grew up in London in the UK, and my English teacher in year 10, so I suppose I was about 15, 16, Mr. Lund, I'm sure he had a first name, but we weren't allowed to know it.
Yeah.
Or perhaps his first name was Mr. I don't know. But he said, see me after school, which you well know is never a good thing. And I remember he poked me like this with his
Yeah.
finger. And he said, now look here, if you work about twice as hard,
Mm,
you could go to a really good university.
mm,
And I said, Mr. Lund, no, I'm
mm.
sure I can't. No one, as far as I know, in my entire family has ever been to a university. And in fact, my dad left school at 14. So, no, I don't think I'm going to be going to university.
Mm,
He said, oh, well, it'll be even better then because you'll be the first one.
mm.
So I did what he said because he believed in me and he encouraged me and he tutored me and he mentored me and he was a lovely man. And I got myself in, or he helped me get in. I got a full scholarship to Cambridge University.
Mhm.
I studied English. I got my bachelor's. I got my master's. And I came out of Cambridge and looked around and said, there is absolutely no work available anywhere that I can see for
Yes.
someone who knows an awful lot about medieval English literature, but
Mm,
not much about anything else.
mm.
But I had earned some pocket money because, they give you a scholarship. It
Yeah.
pays room and board and your books and your tuition, but they don't give you any money to, take a girl out for a coffee or anything. So to earn pocket money, I had worked as an interpreter. And
Mhm.
just by happenstance, I had ended up working for companies in media. And I actually was the unit interpreter on a film about the Monte Carlo rally, where we went from Marrakesh up to Tangiers,
Yeah.
across into Spain,
Mm,
along the south of France, and ended up in Monte Carlo. And at the
mhm.
end of it, the American producer said to me, do you want to come back to Los Angeles? You don't know anything about editing.
Mhm.
And if you want to come back, and I said, well, would it be a job? And
Mhm.
he said, it would be a job.
Mhm.
And I said, would I earn money, actual
Mhm.
money? And he said, yes. And I said, would it be enough? I could get an apartment. He said, well, it will be, but we have my family, we have a spare room. And if you want to use it, and I said, and I'd have to rent a car, right? LA, you can't, public mass transit is no good. He
Mhm.
said, that's correct. He said, we have a spare car. You can
Mhm.
use the spare car. And I came to
Wow.
America
Mm,
effectively all on my own, except for this lovely man, Tony Bushing.
mm.
And I've been here ever since.
And the rest
And
is history.
eventually I went down, raised my right hand, something these days I'm very glad that I
Mhm.
didn't just live with my green card. I went and
Mm.
got my citizenship. And, and then I got married and I have four kids, I have three grandkids, and my life is about 50-50 between producing films, pretty much one a year, plus or minus,
Mhm.
and applying the same toolkit, the same entrepreneurial toolkit
Mm.
to realizing that there is a big unmet need and founding a charity to deal with it.
How amazing.
So the Starlight Children's Foundation, and then Starbright with Steven Spielberg, and then First Star to help kids in foster care, abused and neglected kids, and then edar.org for unhoused people, homeless people, and there are actually seven of them, and
Hmm.
that's my life.
Wow. What an amazing journey from this Mr. Lund who decided that you had to learn English. What an amazing story. Thank you for sharing it. Peter, happiness, you say, is tied to action.
Yes,
What is the first action you believe every young person should take?
easy one. Volunteer.
Okay.
I had to, starting about 2 years ago, I
Hmm.
got up at 5 o'clock every
Hmm.
morning
Hmm.
and made myself write
Hmm.
what turned into a book.
Hmm.
And then much to my amazement, the book got Simon and Schuster Regalo as the publisher, and it's doing incredibly well. It came out this summer. It was the number one nonfiction book on bulk books, which is where colleges and universities buy their
Hmm.
curriculum books. And it's called Finding Happy. And
Wow.
the things that came out of um, one of the things that came out of writing it is
Hmm.
I had to sort of sort myself out. I highly recommend someone who has done a great deal of stuff, but maybe you haven't really paused to have a look at what you've done and how it all clicks together like a jigsaw and what it all means. Just, make yourself write a book because in the process of doing that, I did get my act together. And it's a really easy answer to your question.
Hmm.
What I say, I've mentored hundreds of abused and neglected young adults,
Hmm.
14 to 18 years old through firststar.org.
Hmm.
And I say to them, tell me about your volunteering. If they dare to say to me, well, I don't volunteer,
Hmm.
my life is too complicated, I don't have time. I say, oh, you're missing out on,
Hmm.
honestly, the secret of life.
Absolutely.
Because through volunteering,
Hmm.
many things to do with you, there's a chapter in the book called Selflessness Can Be Selfish, and That's Just Fine. And I really believe that. I think
Hmm.
for a young adult, or frankly for anybody,
Hmm.
first of all, by volunteering, you meet amazing people.
Absolutely.
Secondly, you get promoted so fast. Anyone in any of my seven charities who dares to raise their hand and say, I do have an idea, they're the vice president of implementation in about 5 minutes flat. And it's also,
Yes.
one of the things that young adults always want to talk about is how
Hmm.
do I find love? How do I find someone to love and who will love me? It's a very
Hmm.
big deal. And I say, well, seriously, you're going to go to a bar and
Hmm.
meet, you'll be drunk, they'll be drunk. Seriously? Is that, if you were doing a job interview, if you work for HR in a company, would
Hmm.
you make sure everybody had had 4 beers? No, I don't think so. Yeah,
Hmm.
and furthermore, do you think you can find a life partner or someone to love by flipping left and flipping right on
Hmm.
some app?
Hmm.
No, because don't you realize they've made the picture with AI? They don't look
Hmm.
anything like that. And
Hmm.
you'll when you go and have a coffee, you'll be disappointed.
Hmm.
However,
Hmm.
if you go and volunteer, choose a charity where you care about the cause that is the mission of the charity, and just get on with it and look to the left and look to the right. Who are these people?
Hmm.
First of all, they are now your colleagues.
Hmm.
Secondly, you've had a wonderful time with them sharing the work. And thirdly, you get to know them pretty well. And
Absolutely.
as proof of that, the my first charity was the Starlight Children's Foundation,
Hmm.
which is now over $1 billion
Wow.
raised
Hmm.
over 42 years.
Hmm.
I know you thought I was, 48, but no, I'm not. I'm
Yes. Yeah.
74.
Yeah.
Um, my second date with a very attractive young lady, I said, "Did you tell me you were an accountant? Because I need an accountant. I got this
Hmm.
idea for a charity." And she came to that meeting. And when the lawyer said, well, I need to incorporate it and I need to get the charity certificate and so forth. He said, what do you want to call it? And I said, I have no idea. What do we want to call it? And that young lady said, you know, the children's rhyme, starlight, star bright,
Yeah.
first star I see tonight, etc. She said,
Mm.
why don't we call it the Starlight Children's Foundation?
Wow.
And everyone said, yeah, that sounds very good. And I had invited a graphic designer because you always need one of them for the logo. And
Mhm.
the graphic designer said, I can see it in my mind's eye. It's a child reaching for a star. And
Mm.
I said, well, we're going to make dreams come true for seriously ill children in hospitals. So, yeah, that sounds really good. So
Mm.
that was our second date. We've been married 40 years.
Oh,
We
amazing.
have we have four kids. We have three grandkids. We're very happy. And she's my best friend and my wife and gorgeous still. And there you go. All because of a
Wonderful.
charity.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what great advice, not just giving back, but you even found a life partner. Thank you. Peter, moving on to some of the work you're doing, you have produced more than 25 films. Which film taught you the most about human nature?
I made a film a few years ago called Arlington Road,
Mm. Yeah.
Arlington,
Mm.
Arlington Road. Jeff Bridges, Tim Robbins. Um, it was about domestic far right terrorism.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it was a little prescient. We were ahead of our time.
Mm.
And I wish we hadn't. I wish terrible things hadn't happened after that. In making that film,
Mm.
it dawned on me that you can make commercially viable, silly films, and that's one thing, and there's
Mm.
nothing the matter with that.
Yeah.
Call it distractive entertainment.
Mhm.
But then again, you can make important films about important subjects
Yeah.
that cause important conversations, and you can actually move the needle in society by opening people's eyes and encourage them to apply critical thinking. That was the beginning of that process for me. And since then,
Mm.
and it was a number of years ago, I've tried, occasionally I've done just a silly film,
Mm.
Revenge of the Nerds. I don't
Mhm.
think there is anything socially significant in that
Mm.
film, but
Mm.
mostly what I've tried to do, and the company, PhilmCo Media,
Mm.
which by the way is spelled
Yeah.
PHILMCO media.com.
Yeah.
PhilmCo Media is literally the philanthropic film company, and
Mhm.
we only make double bottom line
Mhm.
films. We are always pushing an agenda.
Mm.
So we're working on a film at the moment that is about school shootings, trying to be constructive
Mm.
and to encourage. It turns out when you talk to the experts, there is always an adult who knows in their heart of hearts that a young man usually is dangerous.
Mhm.
They often don't do anything about it until it is too late. So the whole point of the film is to persuade people
Mm.
to go and do something about it before there's a tragedy.
Mm.
I'm working on another film that is about Germany between 1932 and 1940,
Mhm.
because I think we have a lot to learn from it,
Yeah.
especially in this country,
Mm.
but we don't. So it's a drama, it's a thriller. But by the time you've seen it, you say, oh, yeah, I see. There was a slippery slope.
Mm.
Good people got sucked along with it. And by the time they woke up and said, oh, this is dreadful, this is appalling, it
Mm.
was too late to
Too
do
late.
anything
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all my films these days, and for the last, decade and a half, I
Mm.
guess, I've always tried to do something with them, and we always partner with a non-profit, with a
Yeah.
charity,
Mm.
and we give the charity part of the profits and sometimes a fee as well. And
Mm.
we say, here's your job. Help us get the script right. We don't want to get anything wrong. And then come on the set. And on that day, that's the day before we start shooting,
Mm.
you're going to stand up on a box and you're going to make a little speech about why this film is important.
Mm.
And we will thus motivate our cast and our crew. and that's what you're going to do. And then when it has an ulterior motive, like I said before,
Yeah.
selflessness can be selfish, and that's just fine.
Yeah.
Um, because when the film goes into release, you make a film, and if you are partnered with the World Wildlife Fund, well, they have, 10 million push email
Correct.
addresses of
Yeah.
their membership, their supporters. Well, when the film comes out, they send them all a message
Correct.
saying, "We've made a film.
Yeah.
Let them take ownership of it." And what you now have is word of mouth free
Absolutely.
advertising, which for an independent film is crucially important.
Correct.
So that's the film side of my life. And I still occasionally make a silly film because why not?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if I can get paid properly for
Yeah.
making it.
Yeah.
But mostly I'm trying both to do commercial and um, purposeful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Peter, when I was reading about you, it was fascinating. You worked with legends like Peter Sellers, Blake Edwards, Jude Law early in your career.
I
What was it
did.
like working with some of these legends?
Well, one of the things as an independent producer is you never have enough money.
Okay.
So you are always taking a squint at a young actor and saying, well, I know he hasn't done anything except television commercials.
Hmm.
Do we think he's got it?
Okay.
And so it was with Jude Law on that film. I made a different film, Shoot the Sun Down, um, where we also gave early in the career opportunities to young actors. And I believe in it. And, Jude, I believe we were the first, significant role he had ever had.
Hmm.
And even a silly film like Revenge of the Nerds,
Hmm.
my cast, Bobby Carradine and Anthony Edwards. They went on to wonderful things,
Hmm.
but when we got them, I was paying them the union scale price, maybe plus 10%, just to be
Hmm.
kind, because it was so early in their careers.
Hmm.
So, um, Peter Sellers, an amazing genius comedian, also an incredibly neurotic
Hmm.
man, often difficult to work with. One of my jobs on that film was half an hour before Peter came on the set. That was the Pink Panther film that I did. I
Wow.
would go around and I would stare at all the crew who were already there. And I would go up to someone if necessary and say, Harry, could you go to wardrobe and change your socks? You know that Peter won't work if anyone is wearing green.
Wow.
A small give, but sometimes accommodating the, it's not really ego, it's insecurity. This is the
Hmm.
fascinating thing
Yeah.
about narcissism,
Hmm.
which I've kind of made a study of. You have to, it's
Hmm.
in your toolkit how to deal with narcissistic people. At its core, narcissism is insecurity
Yeah.
and constantly test it. It's like a little child
Hmm.
testing the boundaries. Will my mum and dad get angry with me if I do this?
Hmm.
Will my producer get angry with me if I, do something, if I arrive late?
Yeah.
How far can I push it
Hmm.
before the producers will get upset and so forth? So it's a little, if you study narcissism, it begins actually when a child goes from being the sole focus of their mother's
Hmm.
attention and suddenly they're in preschool, kindergarten,
Yeah.
nursery school, and suddenly they're one of 20 kids and the teacher gives them 5% of the time. And for most kids, it's just fine. They take
Hmm.
their turn. The one who has classic
Yeah.
narcissism, it is the beginning of their rage that they are not receiving all the attention.
Hmm.
And if you look at some of our politicians, not naming names,
Yeah.
and if you look at a lot of significant and talented
Hmm.
actors and actresses, they have that problem. They
Correct.
come down off the stage at the Oscars Academy, clutching their Oscar,
Hmm.
and as they walk back to their seat, they are thinking, it was a fluke. I'm going to be found out. I will probably never work again.
Hmm.
It's an insecurity at its
Hmm.
core and very difficult to deal with.
Correct. Isn't this something like imposter syndrome as well?
Yes, I think imposter syndrome is one name
For
for the
narcissism.
insecurity of narcissism.
Correct. Correct.
It's
Very
an
well said.
actor who thinks that they are, on the one hand, they think they can do anything, and don't you dare question anything.
Correct.
But on the other hand, in themselves, late at night,
Yeah.
first thing in the morning, they're completely scared and they're
Mm.
constantly testing. If you're in a work environment with a narcissist, the thing about an actor is after day one,
Mm.
you now have their face in your film.
Mm.
And there's very little you can do. You can't really fire them. What are you
Yeah.
going to do? Start making the film again? So you
Mm.
have to make it work. But they're constantly testing you. I loved Peter Sellers. I thought
Mm.
he was one of the things I really consider a privilege is that every
Mm.
so often in my career,
Yeah.
and not always, I've worked with someone who was truly a genius.
Mm.
Peter Sellers was a genius in many different ways, but we were in Marrakesh and I had chartered a Boeing 707 to fly the cast, the crew, and the equipment non-stop because that flight didn't exist scheduled from
Mm-hmm.
Marrakesh to Geneva.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter came into my office the day before. He said, I'm going up in the Learjet later today. I
Mm.
have so much baggage. Could you do me an enormous favor and take this bag? And I said, sure, just leave it on the credenza there. I'll be
Mm.
happy to. I'll give it to you in Geneva.
Mm-hmm.
And he leaves, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this bag and I'm thinking, that Swiss customs are going to open everything. This is a non-stop flight with a
Mm.
film crew
Mm.
from Morocco, home of hashish, opium, marijuana, and goodness knows what. And I thought, I know what he's done. He doesn't want to take his stash with
Mm.
him because he doesn't want to be in a Swiss prison for some period of time.
Mm.
And I ended up saying, I'll be damned if I'm going to go to prison, even if he
Mm.
is Peter Sellers. So eventually I went over there, and of course it was locked. It
Mm-hmm.
was one of those briefcases where the leather
Left,
hasp
yeah.
goes through the handle and then down and clicks. So I thought, and I tried to pry it open, nothing doing. So I went back to my desk and I worked and I worked. And that evening I thought, you know what? I'm not going to prison for him. And I took the office scissors and I cut the hasp and I opened it up. It was all full of dirty socks. No, no drugs. And I thought, what has just happened here? I know
Oh,
what he's done. It
oh.
is a combination of a test of whether I would do what he wanted.
Mm.
Could he make me bow to his
Yeah.
will?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I said I would take it, but
Mm.
also a practical joke.
Mm.
And indeed, when I then went and gave it to him, a little shamefaced, and I said, I had to open it because, you have to check the contents before you can
Mm.
be responsible for it. He
Mm.
thought that was the funniest thing. He said, no, 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 no. You just didn't trust me. And I said, oh, it's not a question of trust. It's a
Mm.
question of not wanting to go to prison.
Mm.
And he said, well, I don't blame you. It was a joke. And so what was that really about? It was about him seeing if he could make me take a
Yeah.
locked bag from Morocco to Switzerland.
Mm. No questions asked. Yeah.
No questions asked. Well,
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
had to check into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Peter, you also say, you talk about taking off your mask. What does this mean in the context of modern life?
Well, I think it's a very interesting one. There's an ancient Greek proverb which says, if a man wears a mask long enough,
Mm.
his face will take on the shape of the mask.
Correct.
I've always thought that was pretty smart.
Mm.
And in the context of young adults, which is, helping young adults is my passion, especially abused and neglected kids, you have to get them out of their space.
Correct.
If they are a frightened, insecure, post-traumatic stress disease, they feel very bad. They don't really have an intact ego. They've been I said to somebody recently in the summer, I said, all the girls wear bikinis when they go swimming, but she doesn't. What's that all about? And
Mm.
she said, oh, her whole back is covered with cigarette burns.
Okay.
Oh, who would
Mm.
do that to a
Mm.
little child?
Yeah.
Um, so you have to get them out of their space. So what I do, I only teach two classes in
Mm.
First Star. We
Mm.
have 15 of these academies.
Mm.
I teach the videography class because honestly, at this point in my career, if I can't teach videography,
Yeah.
soup to nuts, then nobody can. But
Correct.
the other class I teach is called Random Acts of Kindness and Pay
Mm.
It Forward.
Mm.
A donor, big donor, said to me, what are you not doing in First Star that you would like to do, but you haven't got the money? And
Mm.
I said, oh, I know exactly. I dream about it. And I explained it to him, and has given me several years in a row the money to do it. So it's a 2 90-minute class course.
Mm.
Class one, I say, okay, you're walking along the pavement, the
Mm.
sidewalk,
Mm.
and there's an old lady in rags lying face down, fast asleep. You have
Mm.
three choices, and so does everybody else.
Mm.
You can put $1 under her arm, don't wake her up, and
Yeah.
walk on,
Mm.
or you can wake her up and give her the money, or you can look the other way, don't give her anything, walk on by. And that
Mm.
I say, so tell me which you would do, and then why do people do each of those three things if that's what they choose to do?
Mm.
Ends up being a conversation about what we call the golden rule,
Mhm.
which is very famous. It's in all 174 scriptures of all 174 religions in the
Mhm.
world.
Mhm.
It's what they have in common, one of many things. And it says that a human being, when they see something that's not fair,
Mm.
like why did I do my homelessness project, EDAR, stands for
Mm.
Everyone Deserves a Roof,
Yeah.
edar.org. I met an old lady and I said, where do you sleep? And she said, I'll show you. And she sort of took me by the sleeve. And behind the bushes on a piece of scrap land was a huge, damp cardboard box. And on the side of it, it said Sub Zero, which is the name of an upmarket,
Mhm.
expensive refrigerator.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I have the refrigerator. She is sleeping in the box.
Amazing.
This this is out. I have to do something about this. So I did. So I say to the kids, okay, so it's in all these religions, but what if you were an atheist? Does that mean
Mm.
you would never help anybody?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, they could do it. And I say, who can tell me? It's usually a 10th grade class, so um, uh, 15 years old, the kids, and there are 30 of them. There's usually two who know the answer to the question,
Mm.
what is the second law of thermodynamics?
Mhm.
And usually one or other of the two say, well, it's the theory of, it's the law of entropy that in any closed system, if you don't apply external energy, it will all turn to random chaos. If you just leave it alone, it will fall to bits and have no value. And I say, okay, well, what is a closed system? And they usually say, the motor in your car. If
Mm.
you don't lubricate the engine, it won't go round.
Yeah.
And I say, but could it be something different than that? Could it be a family? Yeah, it could be a family. If you don't worry about the health of your family unit, you won't have a family unit. And I say, what about a planet? Could it
Mm.
be that big? Yes, if you don't take care of climate change, the oceans will rise and you'll lose, Florida.
Yeah.
Um, so then I say, now you'll want to come to the class tomorrow because something astonishing is going to happen to you. Each of you is going to receive $200. And they're sort of stunned. And they say, each of us is going to get $200. And I say, well, you don't get to keep it. You're going to write a 300 or 350 word essay to
Mm.
whom or to what you wish it to go.
Mm.
And we're going to go and give it to whatever this cause is. It
Yeah.
could be a charity, or it could be, the man at the end of the road who his toes are sticking out of his shoes and
Mm.
they don't match. And then we're going to go back 2, 3 weeks later and we're going to see, did it work? Did he actually buy the shoes or did he buy a big bottle of brandy or something?
Mm.
Um, it's the most amazing process. They write extraordinary. My name is Jose. I'm adding $10 because that's 210, which is 3 times 70. And that's what you have to pay down at the animal shelter for them not to euthanize a dog. And I'm
Wow.
going to save 3 puppies. And the reason I'm going to do that is the last time I was down there, I looked into the eyes of a puppy that had been very badly beaten, nearly killed. And I was very badly beaten. I was nearly killed too.
Wow.
So I'm saving 3 puppies. Love, Jose. My name is Elizabeth, and my mum is in prison for another 2 years, 7 months, and 3 days. They always know
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
how much longer
Mm.
it's going to
Mm.
be.
Mm.
And she did very bad things, including to me. But I know she hates the shampoo, and I'm going to put it in her prison account so that she can buy better toiletries because I love her, because she is my
Wow.
mum.
Mm.
The kids, as a result of these 2 classes and then the follow up, they're all taller. It is absolute. I mean, it's good for the people who get
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
However, it's so good for these foster kids who are usually shy and insecure and have no agency, we would say here. And suddenly they're in charge. Who do you want to help?
Mm.
You're the king of
Yeah.
helping.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they stand upright. They love it. They argue about, is this more important than that? And is this, leverage? There was a Jewish rabbi 800 years ago called Maimonides, and he did a pyramid of giving where the worst at the bottom of the pyramid is to give begrudgingly with a
Mm.
big sign that says thank you. And
Mm.
you work your way up to the very top where you give anonymously with no signage, and you don't give food, you teach a man to fish because
Agree.
then that
Yeah.
will help
Yeah.
feed themselves on, and,
Mm.
and everything in between. So we discuss that and so forth. It's a very important class. It's very counterintuitive. Other colleagues in First Health thought I was crazy to teach this. They said, these are poor kids. They don't have 2 pennies to rub together. I thought, well, that's
Mm.
why we have
Yeah.
to give them money. It's very successful, and it's a good example of, if you want to be happy, get out of your space and go and
Mm.
help someone else.
Mm.
Volunteer, donate, be kind, be generous. If someone is kind to you, say thank you, and then pay it forward. Go and help a third person who
Mm.
will then maybe go and help a fourth person. And
Mm.
suddenly you have, I think, the meaning of life.
Nice.
If all we do is, you know, go and do a McJob and pay some tax and go to bed and live a mundane life. I think that's not what life is about.
Absolutely.
I believe the meaning of life, and you can do it as a volunteer. You can
Yeah.
do it. If you have a job, don't give up your job. You need a job. You've got to
Mm.
pay the
Mm.
rent or the mortgage or whatever it may be. But what you can do is to use your skills through a non-profit, volunteer, be kind, be generous, raise your kids that way. And I do believe there are 3 chapters in the book where it says the meaning of life part one, that's near the beginning. Middle, there's meaning of life part two, and meaning of life part three. Meaning of life part one, I said, as a joke, I think it's chocolate ice cream
Mm.
with a spoon and no one to bother you while you watch a really
Yeah.
good film
Mm.
on the screen in front of you. Meaning of life part two is that repeats as often as you like. But the meaning of life part three at the end of the book is, nah,
Mm.
chocolate ice cream in the end is not how you make your life have legacy,
Correct.
have standing. And I mentor, actually most of the adults I mentor are very, very, very successful and wealthy.
Mm.
And I say to them, what do you want them to put on your tombstone?
Yeah.
Do you want to say he had 1.6 billion?
Mm.
And furthermore, after the first 100 million, the hell do you
It
spend it
doesn't
on?
matter. Yep.
It doesn't, it's ridiculous. It's like
Correct.
a false measurement of a life.
Yeah.
However, lift up young people, that's your legacy.
Absolutely.
Encourage your grandchildren. Many wealthy families, as I've discovered, because they
Mm.
bring me in to try and help them,
Mm.
the grandchildren are so messed up. They call it the G3
Yeah.
effect
Mm.
in wealthy family offices and so forth. G1 is grandma and grandpa who made
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah.
They opened one store, and over their lifetime, they turned it into 250 stores and made an enormous amount of money.
Correct.
The children they've all got the work ethic. They got MBAs and JDs, and they got MDs and CPAs and all the
Yeah.
rest of it.
Mm.
The grandchildren are the lost generation.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult and bad.
Mm.
Substance abuse problems, difficulty with sustaining relationships,
Mm.
a lack of motivation. And I say, if you don't have a family foundation, form one tomorrow.
Mm.
And who you need to co opt, not just onto the board next to you, but also to go out and do the field work,
Correct.
vet causes that you might support, go and find out how they spent your money.
Mm.
That's the grandchildren. And
Absolutely.
if you do that, I say, just watch what will happen. They
Absolutely.
will suddenly realize, oh, there's this whole world
There's
out
meaning to
there.
my life. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But on that note, Peter, we've been speaking for almost 40 minutes. I just want to
Wow.
say, you've got so much knowledge to say. You've got such incredible experiences to say. You're clearly an amazing storyteller, which is why you've been such a successful filmmaker. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own incredible journey. I sometimes wonder uh, what may have happened if, after your Cambridge degree, this one gentleman hadn't offered you that one room and enough money for a car
I
rent
don't know.
in Los Angeles.
We'll
Or
never know.
correct.
But I can tell you this. I have lived a life of hard work and this thing we call the American dream, which is a
Absolutely.
two-way street. And I have always felt I need to put back in because I've been blessed by being let
Yeah,
in. And
absolutely.
that's what the American dream, it's the Statue of
Absolutely.
Liberty and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to be in touch or know more, the website is www.samuelson, Samuelson, .la,
Yeah.
like Los Angeles,
Yeah.
.la, not a .com, Samuelson.la. And the book is all over the place
Yeah.
on, Amazon and
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble and all the other online and offline.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and um, I'm really glad I wrote it. It's been a real pleasure to hear back from readers.
I'm sure they will write to you. Thank you again for speaking to me and all the very best to you.
Well, thank you. I'm honored.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.